Peoples of the universe, please attend carefully. The message that follows is vital to the future of you all.
Well, as luck would have it, it happens again. We put the show to bed, and then on Monday, an announcement was made. Peter Capaldi officially has said that he is leaving the role of the Doctor at the end of the next Christmas episode, which is at the same time that Stephen Moffat's leaving. Peter Capaldi definitely wants his fans to know that there is still a whole year of Doctor Who with him in it for us to enjoy. So, yeah, it's a kind of a downer to begin our show with, but I think the show is only going to go up from here. And it will. And, you know, that just means that Chris Chibnall will get to put his own stamp on the show. We will be talking more about this new announcement in the shows that will be coming up in the next few weeks. I just couldn't let this show go without stating what we heard Monday from the BBC and Peter Capaldi, that he is leaving at the end of the Christmas episode this year, along with Stephen Moffat. Well, now that I've said that, let's get on with the show.
This is Earl Green, author of the VWORP and WARP book series, and you're listening to Mark Who 42.
Welcome to Mark Who 42. That's right, Mark Who 42, Doctor Who on Krypton Radio. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten, and with me as ever are...
Christian Basil,
Patty Hawkins,
Iggy Matthews,
Zon Kuros.
Yeah, the gang's all here, and we've got a show for you today. We have, in the second half of the program, an interview with Earl Green. Now, Earl Green, you may not have heard of, but he is a big Doctor Who and Star Trek and other British sci-fi telefantasy fan. He has written several books, which you can find on Amazon, including VWORP, VWORP 2, which are Doctor Who episode guides, and WARP, which is a Star Trek episode guide, and he's currently working on VWORP 3, WARP 2, and one specifically on British telefantasy. So it's going to be a great show. I hope
we're
you
saying
liked
warp.
our...
It sounds like the Star Trek thing, not the sound that the TARDIS makes.
VWORP and WARP. Yeah, they sound exactly alike. I wanted to start the show off by letting everyone know that Mark Who 42 is in the process of going through a change. We are shifting our show to a new server, and because of this, a lot of places where you listen to Mark Who 42, the listing will change. You're actually going to have to go out in about 2 weeks and switch. Now, we've already done it on iTunes, so we've told you about that last week. On Google Play, the new one, it's called Doctor Who, the Mark Who 42 podcast. That's what you're looking for, folks. And I did promise something last week, and I wanted to start the show off with that. We'd like all our listeners on iTunes to rate us and put a review down on the iTunes show, Doctor Who, the Mark Who 42 podcast. And I promised I would read some of our reviews. The first review is from someone who I think everyone will enjoy. His name is Boy Monkey Butt.
Oh, yes, that is legit.
And Boy Monkey Butt calls us the best Doctor Who podcast and more. He says, I love these guys. They really know their stuff and have different takes on the episodes. Also love their interviews. I love the show. The chemistry is where it's at for this team, and each one brings a different take to the table. They're funny and easy to listen to. A must for anyone who is looking for the Doctor Who podcast. These guys are it.
How flattering. Thank you, Monkey Butts.
Thank you, Monkey Butts. We appreciate that.
I believe that this review right there is quite the asset.
And this is the top review. This is the first review of our new feed. This is our first review from Boy Monkey Butt. So I'm happy that on January 6th, a man named, or a girl, named Boy Monkey Butt wrote to us.
You think
I mean,
it's a
it could
girl?
be a girl. I mean, she prefers
could
boy monkey
be.
butts. Okay? So, she's telling you what she's into.
Yeah, it could be that. Revka73 writes, best Doctor Who podcast by far. I love Marku 42. Their interviews are incredible. That's cool.
Okay, so I'm being inflated slowly, and it's not the pregnancy.
And we've got 5-star ratings, and we ask you guys, if you're listening to the show on iTunes, give us that 5-star rating. We could use it. We would love it in the next few weeks. Please write a review. We will read more of these reviews in upcoming shows. But you know what? I can give reviews till the cows come home. But I think instead of that, we're going to go to... Iggy Matthews and the
Really?
Doctor.
You're going to come to me? Okay, so... Hello, I'm over here in my space capsule, and I'm looking at my monitor right here, and it's telling me all the information in the world. Starting with, you should probably elevate your knees when you are practicing your number 2, because it does help things pass a lot easier.
I'm sure Boy Monkey Butt knows all about that.
Well, this too shall pass, but I'm on the wrong tab. All right, so... well, starting right away, we're going to pay our respects to somebody very important, near and dear to the Doctor Who community, and that is the passing of John Hurt, which, no pun intended, definitely did hurt.
Yeah.
Always in our heart, and... I personally, his most memorable moment that I actually saw him in was as Ollivander in Harry Potter, the first movie, because I was a kid too back then. And, come to realize that he's in all these other things. And when I'm looking at his, filmography, I'm just like, oh my God, he was in that one too, and that one too, and that one too. Holy crap.
Patty actually has one that he was in that he wrote about on Facebook. And I did actually... Even though I'm off social media, I did read it. Patty, tell us about what you remember John Hurt for.
His main triumvirate that everybody's been talking about this weekend has been, Doctor Who, obviously, which we have our vested interest in. Alien, of course, because, he's the guy that the alien popped out of in that seminal moment in science fiction. And
poor Kane.
And the Harry Potter, connection. It also gave us the great name, John Hurt, John Better. To me, though, the first thing I saw him in was as playing Caligula in I, Claudius. And
yes.
If anybody's not seen I, Claudius, it is a smorgasbord of late 70s British Shakespearean talent. Derek Jacobi, Brian Blessed.
Patrick Stewart.
Our favorites. Patrick Stewart, when he had hair.
Yes, when he had hair.
He actually has hair in that one. Sala from Michelette and Gimli.
Oh, come on. My favorite is him in Spaceballs when they did the tribute to Alien and the little alien comes out of his, his chest and he's like, hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Oh, my God, it was great.
This was amazing. And John Hurt really pulled off Caligula.
They don't make great shows like that anymore.
Well, he was terrifying in it. He was absolutely terrifying as this insane emperor that would do anything. And the thing was, he was still had this weird, boyish charm to him when he had moments of lucidity. But this way, he played the part better than Malcolm McDowell did in the movie Caligula. I'll say that. And that's nothing against Malcolm McDowell. And that put him on the map. And then for a long time afterwards, I mean, he just does have the Osterman Weekend, which is a really strange but kind of hysterical Cold War thriller. Not a lot of people seem to remember him as the storyteller, which was an attempt in the early 90s by Jim Henson to take Muppet technology on the side of like the Dark Crystal and do it towards doing these kind of fairy tale-esque stories that were all original. It only lasted like one season, but Hurt played the host of that show, the equivalent to the Crypt Keeper, and he did it with this exaggerated makeup. You could look online for it, like big ears and a Rumpelstiltskin-esque nose and stuff like that. And he just had that gravelly sort of voice. It was, and he was an actor's actor, and having lost people to cancer, it's like, I understand. And I don't know if the words come out yet. People are saying, oh, the cancer killed him. It's like, no, I think the cancer was in remission. I just think that the rest of his body just gave out because a cancer treatment will just do that to you. It certainly did my father.
I have a loved one who died of pancreatic cancer about the time that it was revealed that John Hurt had it. So I did kind of know it was just a matter of time.
Yeah.
You know,
The thing that I kind of wanted to capitalize most about him is that he has achieved something that is not a common feat. And, not everybody can get a knighthood. And he did receive one of those back in 2015, right before he went into remission, as well as receiving the Will Award. So he's very well decorated. So it is Sir John Hurt.
Sir John Hurt.
And Doctor Who fans out there, if you haven't got a chance, watch I, Claudius. Watch The Elephant Man if you haven't seen that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's certainly the most unlikely Mel Brooks movie you'll ever see.
And, obviously that his last works that he's worked on, I think, are the big finished War Doctor stories. So you should get
that's true.
To those.
And we do sell those. Actually, Patty, there was a guilty pleasure that I had in a movie when I grew up called From the Hip, and it was not that popular, and I think it's just because it starred Judd Nelson. But
it's funny. You mentioned that online, and I remember like the poster, but that's it for it. And then I looked it up real quick, and I was like, wait a minute, Bob Clark directed this. Bob Clark, who also directed A Christmas Story.
Oh no, not Porky's?
Oh really?
No, he did do Porky's, but he did Porky's so he could do A Christmas Story.
Oh,
really?
That's actually interesting how those two go together.
I actually found the movie at, and unfortunately, speaking of passings, I just want to give a shout out to all of our friends who have lost the Artagon, and with it, Gods and Monsters, and thank God they're actually found a place to move to. And if you're not familiar, the Artagon was this beautiful, I guess for a better term, an artistic mall, I guess, if someone wants to correct me on that. But it was a different type of mall, and one of our favorite comic book stores, Gods and Monsters, was in there. They used to have a thing every week, and unfortunately they've had a closure too. Everybody at the Artagon had to pretty much be gone.
Did Fuddruckers have to be gone?
There's certain stores that have stayed, and they didn't really announce too many, but I know Outdoor World, the Boot Store, and I think theater. You may have to check the site out. Some of the stores did stay.
I've heard everything is going.
Everything's going?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, unfortunately, Gods and Monsters, one of our comic book stores, but it's actually, I just saw online just recently that they have found a temporary location, so good on you guys. I hope you are very successful on that.
All right.
What I loved about From the Hip was not necessarily Judd Nelson. It was the other three actors who really, I think, made that movie. It actually starts off as a comedy, and the judge is Ray Walston, one of my favorite actors, and he was in Star Trek as well. And also Darren McGavin from The Christmas Story and Kolchak. I liked the movie because one of the things that was appealing was it starts off as a comedy and ends in a tragedy. I won't give too much away, but...
like my life. Oh, God.
But I actually found the From the Hip movie in there in one of the closing stores that had DVDs, and I was like, God, I got to get this. I've never had this. I haven't seen it in a long time. And one of the most spookiest performances I ever seen John Hurt do is in that movie, where the lead character has to defend Benoit, who is played by John Hurt, and throughout the movie, he's the lead character is beginning to realize, I think he did do this murder. But he is so good that he is getting to the point where he's getting him off a conviction. And he has to decide at the end whether he is going to go through with it or somehow find a way to get him convicted with everything that's happened. So if you can find that movie, it's great. But three of my favorite actors are in there. And goodbye, John Hurt. And one of the things I was reading was an article from Stephen Moffat, which I thought was so cute because I'm paraphrasing the article, and I don't remember, and I apologize, I don't know where it came from, but the article stated that John Hurt came in and he just hit the ground running. They immediately casted him, and he started playing the Doctor, and Stephen Moffat was like, I really didn't have to show him anything. He really took off with it. And one of the cute things that I saw in this article was that, according to Moffat, John Hurt goes up to him and he goes, can I really call myself Doctor Who now? Am I the Doctor? He was so excited to be part of this mythos. And he was so happy. And he said, I'm going to give it my all. He wanted to make sure that everybody knew he wasn't just coming in, playing a role, and then leaving, that he really appreciated that he was part of the Doctor Who mythos, and that he wanted to make sure that the amount of time that he had in there, he wanted to prove to the audience that he was just as good as a Doctor as any of them that have ever played it in the past. So, good on you, John. He loved the character.
it's kind of weird and tough for me to talk about John Hurt because, like, this was, like, the first celebrity death that actually, like, impacted me. Because, like, when I was growing up with my mom, and she was introduced me to all the sci-fi stuff, all the good TV, she eventually got me to watch Alien. Mm-hmm. And I was, like, what, 6 or 7 at the time?
Oh my.
So I think that's called child abuse, and she should be arrested.
No, child abuse is my father asking me to watch it with him at the age of 6. That's child abuse.
That would count too. Go ahead, Simon.
No. I even got one better. It was my parents leaving on an HBO movie called A Clockwork Orange, and I'm 6.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. No.
Oh my god.
No.
And that's where they're doing the mother's milk? And the scene where the kids away, and you see them sitting there.
Gag me with a spoon.
That still haunts me to this day.
I am a grown woman, and I was still like, no, please. Okay, Zion, please take this image out of my head.
Please continue.
You're all a bunch of
Okay, so, like, we all know the whole chestbuster scene, but when it actually happened, right?
Right.
Since all of the cast members' reactions were actual reactions, it threw me off. I was like, wait, that's not acting. That's actually real. And that entire scene traumatized me for, like, a good 2 weeks. But, funny enough, that's not my favorite John Hurt role. And if I say it, y'all are probably going to hate me for it. Do you remember the character that he played in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Mm-hmm. I was young, and this movie just came out. And this was my first Indiana Jones movie, so I was really excited to see what the whole hype was about.
Sure.
So, me loving aliens and archaeology and all those other stuff, I was like, this guy is crazy. He loves the Crystal Skull, blah, blah, blah. But it was the fact that he sold to me that he's lost his marbles. That was the first thing that grabbed me about that character. And through this entire thing, even though I don't like the movie anymore, I still love that character for what he did for me when I was a kid.
Wow.
I don't think there's ever a moment in any part of John Hurt's life where he's taken a role, either minor, major, or whatnot, and he's just kind of shelled it away. He's always taken the role seriously. He's done the best that he could with the role. I don't think he's ever had a point in his life, correct me if I'm wrong, where he's never taken something seriously and done the best to his ability. Not like a fourth Batman movie. Hint, hint.
Bat nipples. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he's part of that generation from what was called the kitchen sink era in British theater, where him, McDowell, Warner, and all those guys. These were basically sort of the children and the grandchildren of the Oliviers and the Gielguds, and these were the guys coming on up, and they were counterculture. They were 60s, like Oliver Reed was one of them too. And they took the torch and they ran with it, and they redefined a lot of British acting, and they also redefined a lot of interpretations of what British actors could do, certainly. And just look at his list, look at the list of his peers, and look at the accolades that have been given to him, And let's not forget, there's some other things too, like Hellboy. I don't think anyone's mentioned Hellboy yet.
No.
Right.
Incredible seminal role in that, and you just go on and on and on. And I knew it was on an animated version of Watership Down. I've been meaning to see it, and I had forgotten this too. Somebody reminded me as well too that he was in the adaptation of 1984. A book which very recently has become back into light, but that's all I'm going to say about that.
All right, so a big hail and farewell to Sir John Hurt.
And thank you for the cosplay inspiration.
Oh, yeah.
So moving on into other less somber news, the Sarah Jane Adventures apparently seem to be back.
They're
the kids,
back?
K9, that's the one that I'm most excited about. Oh my God. They're reuniting, in Cardiff.
Obviously without the late Liz Sladen.
It's a 10-year reunion, okay? So it's basically, it does seem to be back, and it's like the old crew, and look at all this stuff, and it's, from what I can see here, is a 10-year reunion, and it's an anniversary, and it is the Sarah Jane Adventures, which I am so sorry I have not watched, and everybody's very much all grown up. So this is not kids anymore. We got like young adults.
But this isn't a TV show. This is actually like a mini convention kind of thing they're holding in Cardiff.
Yes. They're gathering together, all grown up for nostalgic purposes. And I mean, the pictures on markwho42.net, there's a stark difference between the original cast and what we have going now. Yeah. Okay, so there's teenagers, and I'm sorry, but I'm having just PTSD. I just like, we go on and on and on.
Oh, the school bell just rang. Okay.
Please be careful when introducing teenagers to BBC because we've already crossed that road.
Sarah Jane was a great show for the kids and for adults alike. We had two of the doctors show up on there. David Tennant, Matt Smith.
Mm-hmm.
The Brigadier was on a story. They were all a bunch of two-parters, and it was 10 years ago when it premiered. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating convention. I wish I was going to Cardiff to see these people and that were behind the scenes and on the screens. And I just wish that Liz hadn't died because they were planning to go on with the show much longer, and it was going to be a great show. So definitely look into it if you're going to be in the Cardiff area. When is this going to take place?
This is supposed to be July 29th.
July 29th. So if you're going to be in the Cardiff area on July 29th, you should definitely go to this event. You will meet a lot of fascinating people and learn and love Sarah Jane.
Also, it's Cardiff, so what's not to like?
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys something. Did you appreciate the way that the series ended?
Well, see, the problem with the way the series ended was it was in the middle of a season, so they weren't able to finish the story arc. It kind of just
ended.
Stopped. The last episode was, I think, the death of Sarah Jane or something like that. And really,
ironically,
that's ironic, yeah.
But do you think they should have gone on with the kids and maybe written her off, or do you think that's the way it should have ended? Just that one episode, and the adventure continued.
It should have ended. It should have ended without Sarah Jane because she was. I mean, it was her show. The kids maybe should have got a spin-off. Maybe they should have continued with the kids, but they went with Wizards versus Aliens instead. RTD went with that. And,
I think they tried, but it was set in their high school.
So, yeah. What else we got, Iggy?
Next on the news, we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Hubba. He's talking about future of DC movies. Okay.
DC movies? You mean those crappy things that aren't worth anything?
Okay.
Hear somebody growl in the back?
Okay, that was
and it wasn't me.
The DC movies I am not enjoying. I still haven't seen Suicide Squad yet, so I can't say if that was enjoyable or not. But...
Oh, no. I'll give you the wrap-up for Suicide Squad. Basically, Suicide Squad is Hot Topic generated enough money to have their own production. And they went in a nerdy direction with it. That's what Suicide Squad is.
So Dwayne Johnson is basically...
right on the spot.
Yeah. so Dwayne Johnson is basically promoting... crap.
No, he's saying that there's big changes in store for DC Comics. And after so many DC movies being created with dark undertones, Johnson has announced a tonal shift is coming to future DC movies. So, with Johnson actually being a diehard nerd, and he's a huge DC fan, he met up with the heads of DC.
Not.
No, he's totally not.
But you know what? For the sake of the interview, he's totally embodying this. And you know what? He is an actor. So, let's call it practice.
He's a wrestler. I'm not really sure if that's an actor, but okay. I mean, it is an actor. You do act in those wrestling.
I mean, did you really think that the wrestling was real? Come on now.
Yeah, but he was on Deep Space Nine, so no.
No, he was on Voyager.
Why are we bringing on?
Yeah, no. Star Trek's right. We have a Star Trek coming up.
Zion, did you have beef? What's going on with this?
I will never stop questioning this until the end of time. Why is he playing Black Adam? In my mind, I would try and connect things. I always saw that a person that could play Black Adam in the same line could also play Namor.
Namor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
In the Marvel
he
universe.
He doesn't look like both. And also because, like, I don't know, but I want people to take him serious as Black Adam just because of who he is.
The thing is that DC has had a notorious streak with starting off with a good idea and, like Fan-4-Stick. Well, anytime you put the number, Scream 4, it's not Scream 4, it's Screamorum, because they put the number right in the middle of the title. I'm reading it. So Fan-4-Stick started off with a good intentions, good idea, comic book, this and that and the other. But what happens is that when you get into the production and you have these directors and whatnot, they are absolutely notorious for doing whatever the hell they want with this. Like, well, maybe let's just not do that. Maybe let's just not do this. Maybe let's just not do that. And they kind of throw in their own mix. And when it comes out in movie theaters and all the nerds are pissed off with what we're watching, they're over here scratching their heads going, I actually thought that was pretty good. I don't know what happened. So they keep trying and they keep doing this only for one reason, and one reason only, is because they got to compete with Marvel. They got to keep up with that. And I'm like, at this point, either re-sign an entirely different crew, like different directors and or sell it to Disney. Disney seems to know what they're doing. They want to like monopoly the entertainment business.
Are you talking about giving Fantastic Four back, or are you talking about them giving Captain Marvel back? Because
I'm thinking
the thing is, like, DC Cinematic
DC
Universe
should be owned by Marvel so that there's a monopoly in comic book movies.
DC and Marvel do need to be different, okay? But the thing is that the people that are working behind DC, there's a stark difference between a Marvel movie and a DC movie. And the thing is that, you look at the DC comic books themselves and the stories, they're awesome. They are badass. Okay, but when you watch them in the big screen, it's like, what happened? What? It's like you started off so good and then it's just gone.
Well, going back to the beginning. Time Warner has owned DC long before Disney bought out Marvel.
Correct.
DC's always had a corporate oversight. Now, really, for the most part, it was just almost looked at as a tax write-off and just an idea generator. And they were just like, okay, it's Superman and Batman and those silly things, and about every 12 years we'll drag out Superman or Batman and make some money off it. When the evolution of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was building up, the DC bean counters and the marketers were laughing. They were telling their masters, like, Marvel is ridiculous. They're putting all their characters into one movie that'll make maybe like $200 or $300 million, instead of putting each of the characters individually in a movie that'll make $200 million each. They were laughing at Avengers. They really were. Then Avengers goes on, becomes an over $1 billion film, and then all of a sudden they're scrambling. And then this big DC Cinematic Universe was announced, and they just announced titles. They had no plan. They still had no plan because they'd never had a node. They've never had anybody who's directly in charge. They don't have a Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige, right or wrong, is the guy at the Marvel Cinematic Universe who says yes or no, and this is the direction we're going into. And that showed tremendously. Man of Steel was what it was. Batman versus Superman. DC, I've been able to realize this, that Warner Bros. Really, really thought that was going to be $1 billion movie. They really, truly thought, and why is that? Because Ten Fagata, who's currently right now the CEO of Warner Brothers, like, he loved it, but he had no sense of it. The guy came from a marketing background, and all those guys do is they just sort of look at numbers and, okay, well, on paper it looks good, so it's going in that direction. Now they are finally kind of waking up, smelling the coffee, and they brought in Jeff Johns, DC's like top writer, to kind of fill in the role of Kevin Feige. But the thing is, as much as I love Jeff Johns, he's still kind of an ass kisser, and I don't think he's got the temerity to draw a line in the sand and say, no, Superman will not do this. Batman does not do this. And they're still floundering. They're still trying to pick up the power structure. Now, back to the Dwayne Johnson thing. As far back as 10 years ago, DC was starting to float the idea of what if we got, and they knocked on his door, and Dwayne Johnson, a long time ago, did a letter on social media. He said, hey, who should I play, Black Adam or Captain Marvel? And everybody said Black Adam. And at one point, DC was actually drawing Black Adam like Dwayne Johnson in the comics.
They did, didn't they?
They did. When he did a face turn and was in the Justice Society, kind of hanging around for a while, he was very much drawn just like that. Now, bringing up to now, DC is desperate, and what they do, they had a meeting with Dwayne Johnson, and they basically said, okay, forget Captain Marvel. The only reason for Captain Marvel is going to be just to showcase you as Black Adam. For those of you who don't know, Black Adam is the anti-Captain Marvel Shazam. He's the guy who originally got the powers back in ancient Egypt, and then he got evil, and his outfit looks exactly the same as Captain Marvel's, only it's black and yellow as opposed to red and yellow. And he comes up in modern day, and he wants revenge he wants to rule the world again, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, they went to Dwayne Johnson and said, we want to remake The Scorpion King, which was starring you, by the way, only now you're going to have superpowers. And here's the absurd levels that they're doing with it. They're so desperate. They're like, okay, you got your star power. Yeah, and yes, everybody loves you. And I like him too. I think Ballers is an incredible show, which actually has shown off a unique range of his acting. And Pain and Gain, I think, is one of the best satires of the malevolence of what the American dream has become as opposed to what it was. But the fact of the matter is that they said, all right, just do whatever you want. So Dwayne Johnson has authority over the director, and he gets to choose the screenwriter. That's a little bit too much power for somebody like him to have without any sort of oversight. But again, their attitude is simply, oh, we got Dwayne Johnson, so we know it's going to be a success. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be, they literally because they're afraid to make any kind of commitment. And they still don't even know if they want it to be a part of the actual DC cinematic universe. They don't know. They still haven't figured out if they want it to blend in with Justice League or not. The latest rumor right now is that, okay, we'll introduce Shazam, Captain Marvel in Man of Steel 2. I'm like, well, then what the hell are they going to fight? Because you've got the two top powerhouses, and it's just, it's a mess. It's still a mess.
Yeah, and you literally just listed why DC is not doing well right now.
And by all accounts, Wonder Woman is a mess. By all accounts, Justice League's a mess. And there's serious rumors that if Justice League craps, that they may just pull the whole thing. I mean, the stockholders may just be like, stop wasting our money on this and just let it go fallow and do a hard reboot in like 2 or 3 years.
I think DC's so desperate, right, that they just...
Well, it's not DC, it's Warner Brothers. That's
Warner Brothers, yeah.
I'm sorry, Warner Brothers, that they're so desperate that they're trying to emulate the Avengers. It worked. It started way back with Iron Man. The problem is, now that the Johnny-come-latelys and that horrible story with, the Martha story and everything. I mean, every movie that I've seen come out of DC as far as the Suicide Squad, going back to the Man of Steel, everybody's going like, did you even read the comic book? Did you even watch? Do you even know what you're putting out there?
Because they think they're putting lipstick on a pig. DC Warner Brothers has always been lightweight to the DC properties. They get some filmmaker who really thinks he's elevating it. It's not just limited to DC. Like you said, the last Fantastic Four movie, Josh Trank really thought he was Prometheus and giving fire to us and elevating the material without actually just appreciating the material. To do a comic movie, you need somebody like Joss Whedon who understands the characters and understands how much can. And I've always said this for years, forget adapting classic stories because you don't have the narrative structure to support it. And you can't just strip mine the imagery for it. What made that first Avengers movie work so well was throw everything out the door, just get the characters right. That's all we want. Just get the characters right and have them behave as they nominally should, and you can just pretty much go with it. Otherwise, we would have seen the Hulk disguised as a circus clown juggling elephants, and instead we saw him smashing, it's like alien Chitharis.
Right.
So Warner Brothers, good luck with Black Adam. All I could say is The Rock didn't save the G.I. Joe franchise, so caveat emptor.
I'll even go back even further. See, one of my geekdoms is the video game Doom. And when I heard they were going to go into a movie, I was like, cool. And this is my guilty pleasure. And I heard The Rock was in it as a Sarge. I said, well, God, I mean, as for physique and everything else, I mean, it's not supposed to be taken seriously. It's not supposed to be this dramatic or thing. And then when I saw the movie, I'm like, did you even know what this video game was all about, except at the end when you pretty much emulated how the game plays? Other than that, I'm just like, do you know anything about what Doom is about? I mean, you just basically rebooted it, killed off the Sarge, and I'm just like, well, that's the end of the whole thing. There's no point. I mean, there is no sequel. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But it's Dwayne Johnson, and we know whatever label you put Dwayne Johnson is, he's going to pull in at least $20 million to whatever you do. And Dwayne is an all right actor. I mean, we know he follows into that genre of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's the big muscle-bound guy, but put him in the right circumstances, he could actually pull things off. But I see that's where DC went. I'm just like, did you do anything to research this? Did you even look at the, open a comic book and tell me what was going on? So
no, because it's beneath them. And the same thing in video games. Yeah, you're right. Video games sometimes can be they even get more of a screw job than anybody else. So it's.
But they don't realize there's a storyline behind that. They just thought, oh, it's a shoot 'em up, beat 'em up gang. We'll just rewrite the story. I'm like, that is not the story of the Sarge. And there's a lot more into it. But
I was ready to burn the theater in '94 for the Street Fighter movie.
I think some people did.
It was only a Tuesday.
All right. Well, Iggy, I want to thank you for doing the news today.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, and we'll have you back, of course, doing the show. And speaking of having us back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to have our interview with Earl Green, writer of the episode guide of, well, the several episode guides of Doctor Who and its spin-offs and stuff, and Star Trek, and the upcoming Telefantasy book. So we'll have that right here on Krypton Radio right after this.
Coming May 19th through the 21st, Oasis 29 continues to celebrate excellence in science fiction and fantasy. Oasis 29 will take place at the Sheraton Orlando North Hotel, featuring special guest writer Faith Hunter. The best way to see Oasis 29 is with your 3-day weekend membership pass. Your pass will include full admission to all the art exhibits, dealer rooms, guest speakers, writing panels, and of course, a special appearance by your favorite Doctor Who podcast, Mark Who 42. A con suite for nourishment will be available on site. For more information, hotel rooms, and purchase for your tickets, including student discounts, go to www.oasfis.org/oasis. Oasis 29 is an event that promotes safe and fun environment for the entire family and upholds that cosplay is not consent. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm John Davis. I'm the editor of Celestial Toy Room, part for the Doctor Appreciation Society, and you're listening to Mark Who 42.
Welcome back to Mark Who 42. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten. We've got Christian Basil, Patty Hawkins, and our special guest, the author of the two Doctor Who episode guides, VWORP and VWORP 2. It's Mr. Earl Green. Hi, Earl.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So it's great to have you here. I read your books. They are great, and we're going to talk to you about Doctor Who and other stuff because you've written VWORP for Star Trek.
Yes, I have.
And you're in the middle, I think, of writing one on British Telefantasy in general.
Yes, I am. That one's sort of a long-term project, and it's going to be a big book, but I'll kind of get into how big some of the books are a little bit later, because that's, I'm trying not to make them huge anymore.
Yeah. Oh, and they are, I have it for my Kindle, and they, they're pretty big. But, they're informative, and you cover a lot of ground. But let's start real easy with a simple question. How did you get into Doctor Who?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Somewhere around the age of 8, it's like all of a sudden, my mother said, it's okay for you to watch this stuff on PBS that comes on about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And so simultaneously, I became a fan of Doctor Who, Monty Python, and the Benny Hill Show.
Christian, this sounds like you.
Yeah, that's it.
Sounds like your story.
I was telling them, they said, listen, my parents made me watch PBS because they thought it was safe. So they would put it on Sesame Street, they put on Mr. Rogers, they would put on Electric Company. And then, there were some shows, iClaudius and stuff like that. Later on, when Full Frontal Nudity showed up in PBS, where my parents...
Later on, dude, that was like 8 years old when I was watching that.
Yeah, it was great stuff.
No, what I meant, like, later on in the day. Like, they would have all the children's television shows, and then they would kind of sneak in there with Good Neighbors.
Well, The Good Life had no nudity in it. I mean, Felicity Kendall might have, I kind of dreamed.
No, I'm talking about, like, Benny Hill and Monty Python.
Right.
And my favorite, which nobody talks about anymore on PBS, which was Dave Allen.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Dave Allen at Large.
Dave Allen at Large was a great Okay, we're losing it. Earl, you were watching. You started to watch PBS at age 8. You were saying, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I remember Benny Hill and Monty Python were on PBS. Now that I'm thinking back to it, and I'm pretty sure this is actually in the introduction to one of my books, so I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. Doctor Who, I first saw on KTVT out of Dallas. It was a commercial station. They would have commercial breaks in it. And I don't know if you remember some of the DVDs that came out early, some of the Region 1 DVDs had the Howard De Silva intros. I remembered those, and I never expected to see them again.
In the last episode of Doctor Who, the Doctor was fighting a robot. He didn't even like Doctor Who.
It's just that delivery. That was fantastic delivery. I've done radio and TV voiceovers most of my adult life, and that delivery just said, "I have no bleeping idea what any of this is about, but they're paying me to say it anyway."
They didn't care. It was Ben Franklin narrating Doctor Who, so that's
what he did.
But he was still more lively than the announcer that we had on Arkansas PBS, which, up until recently, when I could finally divest myself of my VHS tapes that had been faithfully recorded off of Arkansas PBS back in the 80s and maybe the early 90s, they had a very sleepy announcer who sounded like he was a leftover from a light jazz radio station in the early 80s. Coming up next, Doctor Who. It's like I'm struggling to maintain consciousness to get to the very last syllable of this.
WPBC had a generic-y one like that too. I know Mark probably remembers it. It's like, join us at Adventures of Doctor Who as he travels the cosmos, vanquishing monsters.
Yeah, but at least in the last 5 minutes when it was over, we got to watch Jack Horkheimer.
Greetings, fellow stargazers!
No.
Greetings!
Wait, Patty, we got to do the theme. If we're going to do this, we got to do the theme together. You ready?
Some people hustle pools, some people hustle cars. But here's that man you've heard about, the man who hustles stars. Jack Horkheimer, Star Hustler.
Which is funny because they later changed the name of the show with the advent of the internet, and suddenly someone said, hey, you know what? We probably don't want Hustler anywhere in the name of this show.
Yeah, Star Hustler.
It became Stargazer, didn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's Jack Horkheimer, Stargazer. I was just like, no, he's the Star Hustler. Don't do that. Don't rewrap. Don't rewrap the name.
Now, you do know at night in Tomorrowland at the Magic Kingdom, that is incidental background music.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
no,
if you walk through Tomorrowland at night, whatever, because that was like house music that anybody can license and use. And yeah, and every time I hear it, I'll be like, "Hey, it's Jack Horkheimer theme."
Serious?
What the Isao Tomita cover of Arabesque #1 that they used for Star Hustler?
The very same one. The very, very same one.
That's wild.
I gotta stay in Tomorrowland a little bit longer. I need to find that.
But here's the deal. But it's only at night, though.
That's fine. I'll be there at night.
Well, it should be at like 10:35. I mean, I wouldn't expect from long, years of viewing habits, I would not expect to hear it before 10:35 p.m.
No.
Anyway, so you watched a lot of TV shows and wrote a book about it. Okay.
Yeah, and the books are great. Now, I like the way when you give the episode synopsis before you give all the little tidbits and secrets about the episodes and stuff, you keep away from spoiling. And I totally get why you do that. And you can let them know that.
Well, no book. Well, okay, I say no book, and, here I am talking to a bunch of people who know what target novelizations are. Scratch that.
I sell them.
No book should.
That was the only reason I
story.
joined the Doctor Who fan club of America, so I could order the books.
Yeah, because that was always in the back.
Yeah.
I filled out that form myself. But something like an episode guide, it should not spoil the story. And that's kind of a holdover from my website, which is where some of the material originated, going back to the 80s and 90s, which I was actually, my website was up and running in very primitive form. Well, not as a website, it was a BBS thing.
Yeah.
But
I
in
remember those
1989.
bulletin boards. Yeah, I remember the BBSs.
And so some of the stuff in the book is an evolution of material originally written in 89 and 90. I mean, effectively, I've been writing the book for 30 years. But the synopsis should not spoil the story. They are not a replacement for the story, especially not Doctor Who. I mean, a 1-hour show or a half-hour show, it's, you're probably going to get most of the essence of it in. Doctor Who, a one-paragraph summary, leaves a lot of room to discover things.
Right, and you do want people to go and watch the episode. You don't want them just to read what it's about and go, oh, and move on. You're basically trying to get them to watch the episode you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them hooked, and if something is unavailable, like I think a lot of the BBC narrated audio CDs have gone out of print, although I think they're about to reissue the box set of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Some of that stuff that has gone out of reach, there should be enough of the essence of the story to get it across between the summary and the discussion. But it's not really meant to replace the experience of watching or listening to the story.
And then you have like different graphic codes for different things that are in the episode to look out for. You've got special topics, and let's talk about some of those. When you do the AKA and you let people know where else you've seen people. Now, Doctor Who magazine has done that during their fact fiction section. They always have the where have I seen this character from, and you definitely include stuff like that in yours, don't you?
Yeah, and sometimes I aim for the obscure.
Yes.
And Star Trek crossovers, any Star Trek crossovers, are made out to be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Blake
why not?
7 as well.
Yes, because I am
always mentioned Blake 7.
Yes, I am a huge Blake 7 fan. But, I'll try to go out of my way to mention other stuff like Moonbase 3, which I think maybe...
Oh, yeah. Letts and Dix put that together, yeah.
Yeah, 4 other people know about that show, and 3 of them are Terrence Dix.
Well, I'm one of the other. Okay, so you add one more to that because I am a fan of that show too. Yes, you should all run out and get Moonbase 3. You can get it on DVD in England.
Yes, you can.
And they're listening to this show in England as well, so definitely pick it up. It's a serious take on science fiction. It's very sciencey. It's slow moving, but it's enjoyable, I think. And
when you say slow moving, are we talking like first season Space 1999 level?
Perhaps slower.
Okay.
There's a lot of talking going on,
and I don't mean that in a belittling sort of way. I just try to get a pace in my head. Okay, all right.
Yeah. A lot of it is politicking.
Yeah.
Between the characters, lots of negotiations and arguments. And it kind of fits in with Doctor Who of that time, which I believe Moonbase 3 was 1973 or 74.
Yeah, it was right when Letts had left Who. They went right into Moonbase 3, if I remember.
Well, it was actually between their last 2 seasons.
Oh, was it between the last 2 seasons?
Yes, because if you watch Invasion of the Dinosaurs and look at the, how Sarah Jane winds up on the spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the Moonbase 3 sets left over from the show that never got picked up again.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. Oh, wow.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Wow.
Wow, you stumped Baumgarten.
You stumped Mark 42. You are the first. Wow.
What do I win?
We'll talk about that later.
What?
No, what are you talking about, Christian?
How do you brought it up and say, "Well, talk"?
This is a family show, for God's sake.
I know. That's why we're talking about it later.
Yeah, exactly. No. Okay. So, Earl.
Yes.
Let's go bring it back to Doctor.
Right.
Now, the first book, VWORP,
yes,
was basically classic series and the beginning of the new series.
Yeah, it gets us up through... it gets us up to the end of 2011 because the book was released in 2012. So we had, so you're up to the first 2 Matt Smith seasons in that book, right before we hit the long gap where, we're going to air half the season in 12 and half the season in 13. And the second book picks up from series 7, as we call it. I have to remember what people are calling it because to me it's just, it's the 2013
series 38
season.
or something. I don't know. No, yeah. I got to tell you, it's interesting what you did with the second book because since it came out right before Capaldi went on, so you didn't cover the Capaldi, you did, however, branch out to more than just the TV show. And
yes.
I like what you did.
Well, here's the thing. The morning that Night of the Doctor hit YouTube and of course, for the UK viewers, hit the red button service. I had literally just stepped out of the shower and sat down to watch that on YouTube. First off, I went in completely unspoiled because I'd really been trying to stay. I really kind of, you talked about earlier the synopses don't spoil it. I really try to live as much of a spoiler-free life as I can because, chances are I'm probably going to have to pay one way or the other to see or hear this stuff.
Right.
I want it to be a surprise. I want the experience of the story surprising me. So I really don't do a lot of hanging out on forums where they talk about this stuff months out. I was very pleased with how much of a surprise Rogue One was because I avoided even trailers after that first one. I really try not to spoil it for others, and I try to stay unspoiled myself. But the thing about Night of the Doctor is that right at the end when he starts, naming off Charlie, Kariz, and all of that, it was like, oh my God, it's all official. And then it hit me. It's all got to go in the book because there is absolutely no better crossover I could ask for. I would hate to say, I'll talk about these in the next book. No, I really went back and rewrote the plan for that book because at that moment I knew, no, they've all got to be in this book.
So, Patty, basically, he talks Big Finish like you tell me not to at conventions.
Oh, that's fine.
No.
He's the expert, and you're the salesman.
Yeah. That's okay.
Well, why not talk Big Finish up? Because I am firmly of the belief that we have them to thank, at least partly, for the fact that Doctor Who is back on TV.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
Yeah.
I bust Mark's chops on Big Finish.
He busts my chops, yeah.
Because we'll be talking a question of canon, whatever, and then Mark will immediately jump in and say, "Well, actually, this adventure, blah blah blah," as if he's reminding everybody in the room, without really realizing, Mark, you're the only person.
I'm the only one that knows it. Yeah.
Well, that's part of it.
Well, that's why That's why I sell the audios so that people can understand what I'm talking about.
And that's fine.
No, Patty, correct me if I'm wrong. He will go out. He'll step up. He'll go to the next person that walks up, and he will give a 30-minute lecture on one of the Big Finish audio that goes over there. And it turns out the whole time he's been talking to a 5-year-old kid who's never even heard of Tom Baker, and he's got a sonic screwdriver and a fez on his head. Trying to sell this kid for the last 30 minutes, a Tom Baker episode, and the kid's going like,
make me feel bad, man.
No, it's not.
Well,
it's a testament to your knowledge, sir.
Thank you.
Stuff that, but yeah, don't talk to 5-year-old kids about Tom Baker.
Yeah, I'll try not to. But Earl definitely went into Big Finish, and not only did he cover the ongoing to a point, you brought in the Tom Baker Big Finish audios. You went with the Hornet's Nest stuff.
Yes.
And that stuff that BBC did that wasn't Big Finish, does that really fit as... Because, they're audio adventures, but they are, like you say, mostly the companion chronicle kind of writing. It's almost like, they're sitting in the house telling a story.
Well, the Hornet's Nest and the follow-ups to that, whose subtitles I've forgotten now that I'm sitting here talking about it. That stuff, honestly, as a fan, I could take it or leave it. I like elements of it. I like the idea of the Fourth Doctor teaming up with an older Mike Yates. And I got genuinely attached to Mrs. Wibsey.
Yeah, she's good.
At first, I was kind of irritated because it was like, I remember reading about Tom Baker saying that he wanted, an older companion who could barely keep up with him. And it sounds like they're just doing this to, to keep Tom interested. But they actually made a character out of her that I could grow attached to. And as far as including it alongside the Big Finish stuff, which, we have televised evidence now that it is to some extent canonical. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be weird to not cover the BBC audios, which is also why stuff like Destination Earth and Paradise of Death is in there, because the John Pertwee BBC audios, I could take or leave even more than the Tom Baker stuff. Because
Doctor Who and the Pescatons, I had the album.
Yes. Yes.
I had the album when I was younger.
So I thought it would be more awkward to leave that stuff out.
Yeah.
Than to go ahead and cover it and say, well, this is something that someone else did and may or may not be under the umbrella that Big Finish gets grandfathered in. However, you look at things that Big Finish have done, like they did the one McGann audio that was 4 different stories, and they had Fitz, and they had Benny,
Fitz was brought into the books or canon because of that, yeah.
So everyone, that's my theory, is everyone gets grandfathered in. It's all official. It's up to you how much of it you want to take on board. And, as far as the timeline goes, it's up to you how you want to make it work, because it's, some of it's kind of ground beef at this point, trying to make a coherent timeline out of it, but that doesn't stop some of us from trying.
And God bless you for that. That's a rabbit hole I wouldn't be brave enough to go into.
It's a thankless task, but I definitely wanted to include the Big Finish stuff in there because to some extent the intro to the Big Finish section evolved from a convention panel I'd been doing for several years, telling people, okay, you go on, you moan and complain about how Doctor Who is off the air for 9 months or longer. There is this whole other thing going on that, honestly, at this point, I'm almost at the point where there's too much of it for me to keep up with.
There is too much.
How many
hours of Big Finish are there out there?
I actually counted it. There's more hours of Big Finish Doctor Who than there are of BBC Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I actually counted it up, and I stopped keeping count once the threshold was crossed, but it was it was definitely an eye-opener. It's like, okay, I think we owe Big Finish a little bit of a pat on the back because they've kept this thing alive in a way that most media properties could only dream of.
Oh yeah, and it's done by fans. The fans are running the candy store or the TARDIS, as it may be.
It is, and although I really have appreciated as we've gotten into the, we kind of left the Gary Russell era and got into the Briggs era, I appreciated them pushing some of the boundaries and allowing a little bit more mashup than they had done previously. I mean, really, my only huge disappointment with any of their recent output is a complete failure to tie together the old Unit audio series with the new one.
They're two separate series. I mean, Countermeasures, they're doing the new Countermeasures now, and that totally fits together. But yeah, the Unit that they did, that Nick Courtney did one or two of, and I think David Tennant was in it as well, has nothing to do with the Kate Stewart Osgood Unit stories they're doing now, or even the Klein story they did with Sylvester and the Master.
Yes.
There's no connection.
Yeah, that's because here's the only reason that really disappoints me is I really liked that early Unit series, not just because Nicholas Courtney was in, I think, episodes 1 and 4, and there was an intro episode that was sort of a B-side of a standalone Benny audio. Mm-hmm. I really liked the modern sensibility of that because I think that predicted and in some ways still surpasses what they're doing with modern Unit on TV and audio. And, for it being only 4.5 hours of material, I grew really attached to those characters. You mentioned David Tennant. That's one of my great regrets about him being signed on as the Doctor for television is we got no more Colonel Brimacombe Wood, who is absolutely one of my favorite characters in the entire universe of Doctor Who, because you can't go wrong with the constantly swearing Scotsman.
Yeah, Patty, you can chime in here. I know you're not Scottish, but you can do it.
Why? Wait, what start rattling out curses? No, thank you.
Be a swearing Scotsman. I don't know.
Scottish on cue.
It's crop.
Okay. There we go.
All right. So you cover Big Finish. You also covered K9. You covered Torchwood.
Yes, and Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah, Sarah Jane. Love Sarah Jane Adventures. And now I said at the beginning that we've only got 2 so far, VWORP 1 and VWORP 2, and I love the fact that you named it after the sound that the TARDIS makes when it's dematerializing, thanks to Doctor Who comic books and the magazine. But are you working on a third? I'm assuming you're going to be working on a third covering Capaldi and more of Big Finish?
Oh, it's already in progress. Because
how about Class? Because,
yes.
Okay, if you want, you should listen to our bonus podcast that we did last year because, you can get some ideas from us and you can have them free. I'm giving them to you. Okay.
Let me just say, you can get the ideas from the rest of my castmates, but you won't get too many from me.
Yeah, Patty's not a Class fan. He dropped out before it even started.
I watched the first two
But
episodes and I said I was
the
done.
class. You didn't join the class in session, though.
No.
Yeah, you played hooky.
Yeah, I haven't even watched all of them yet because it's very different now. I think back to the 80s and 90s. I had this Saturday night lineup that was without fail. I would sit there and watch this stuff for about 4 or 5 hours straight. You'd have Star Trek The Next Generation come on one of the local stations, switch over and catch half an hour of Doctor Who because the Oklahoma PBS channel, because I live basically on the border between Arkansas and Oklahoma. So you pick up both if you have a good antenna. And they were showing the 25-minute episodes as God intended you to watch Doctor Who.
Yes, that is the way God intended it.
And then they would chase it down with the tripods. Although at one point they had like 7.
Yeah. I love the tripods. I wish they made season 3. I wanted the conclusion.
I think they should do an animated version of season 3, but do it kind of like Clone Wars, but make them look like the actors from the BBC show. I would allow, the judges would allow that. I would let that.
Would they allow that it has to be the same actors doing the voices, or can they go for other voices?
If the actors are game and they don't sound entirely dissimilar to how they sounded when they were, 17 or 18.
Kind of like Matthew Waterhouse sounds completely dissimilar to how he sounds now. Oh my God. The Big Finish ones that have Adric in him, he doesn't sound a bit like Adric anymore. He can't even try. He doesn't put any effort into it.
Maybe
not.
But...
he's older now. He's a man. He's
but
he's put a lot of things in his mouth since the days he played Adric, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, and we're stopping that right there. He is the swearing Scotsman without the Scottish accent. There you go. Okay, but the guy who played Beanpole, is he even still alive? I don't know.
Well, I know for a long time there was an urban rumor that actor had died, but no, he's actually alive and well. He's just not acting anymore.
Oh, okay.
So it's it's kind of an Abe Vigoda thing.
We all thought
it's the
he was
80s
dead way
BBC
before
version of Abe Vigoda.
Yeah.
And then I could switch back to the station that had Star Trek on because they would do some local sports call-in show. If I switched back from tripods just in time, you'd catch Friday the 13th, the series, and War of the Worlds, the series. So that pretty much dates me right there.
Patrick, do you remember when Channel 29 in Palm Beach used to run Friday the 13th, the series, and War of the Worlds, and for the commercials for it, they played REM's End of the World as We Know It?
I don't remember that REM tidbit, but I certainly remember the show when it was on. I am and still remain a big fan of the Friday the 13th TV series.
Yes.
War of the Worlds, though. Wow, what a weird thing. The first season starting out very stereotypical invaders remake. The aliens just look just like us and blah blah blah. But that second incredibly depressing season that was like, I quit watching this. Even it was too dark for me. It was like, we're gonna drill your daughter's brains out. Oh yeah, here's your kid. I'll give you a little like thimbleful that was her powdered brain and hardy har. It's like, man, where? And I was like, where is this leading to? Because it doesn't seem like it's gonna be a planet worth fighting for. So
it wasn't a planet worth fighting for. That's why it got canceled.
And they never, So that was out.
In the first season, who was the one who played the military guy, Chief Iron Horse, or what was the actor's
Richard
name?
Chavez.
Richard Chavez.
He later turned up the Highlander.
Right.
Yeah.
So when he gets off the show, they replace him with Adrian Paul from Highlander.
Yes, I remember that.
So it's a Highlander life here. No, I mean, I like Highlander series, and I know Patty's, I don't think, is a big fan of the series. Where you're not a Highlander fan.
I got monotonous with the other Immortal of the Week up to no good.
Right.
And then when the what are they called, the Observers or
the
Watchers.
Watchers.
I was like, that's when I was done. I was like,
I like the guy who played Jazz.
Jim Burns.
And stuff. Jim Burns is a great guy. I actually met him, and it was funny. Speaking of World of Worlds, when it started, I was at NolaCon in 1988 when it was WorldCon. And so I went to the press conference about World of Worlds and got autographs. I have Jared's autograph on a picture of him somewhere in one of my boxes. I love that show, and I don't care how dark it got in season 2. It was still fun. in a way because it was just disgusting. I mean, it was icky.
Patty, I got a quick question. You watched Friday the 13th, the series?
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm like, okay, so I wasn't the only one.
No, you weren't the only one. It lasted a while.
It was 3 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
I can go ahead and say this because it's on the table. I've been talking to a comic book publisher about. I started as a joke, but a comic book publisher buddy of mine literally said, "Hey, let's do this." When I said, "You know what? I think I want to buy out the rights to the comic book rights to Friday the 13th, but then piss everybody off by doing the TV series and not just comic books of it's like of Jason running around hacking off like virgins and stuff." And a publisher buddy of mine sent me an email and said, "Let's do this. No, seriously, let's really do this." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's look up the rights and we'll take it from there." Well, so.
But that wasn't the only one, because Friday the 13th was one, and I was one of those. It's like, okay, where's the Jason character? And I remember they had on Showtime Poltergeist: The Legacy, and there was no Poltergeist. So I'm like, well, what the hell is that?
No, I knew from the get-go, from the little TV guide, that what the plot was, and I was enamored with the plot, with the whole, the cursed relics and them going after them, and I thought that was a great hook. That was very imaginative, the cursed items and what they would do and all that stuff. And I really enjoyed that show, and I think it's kind of an underrated gem.
Well, you see, I watched it for the redhead, so.
Oh, for the redhead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Earl, you're a big Star Trek fan too, aren't you?
Just ever so slightly, because...
Ever so slightly.
Well, not only... I was an Uber fan, and then I started reading stuff like Cinefantastic magazine. They would do the yearly...
I used to read that, yeah.
The yearly Mark Altman roundup, which was just the juiciest stuff you'd ever heard about a TV show, and I thought... wow, I want to get into writing for TV. And that, I actually got into broadcasting at that point and wound up spending a goodly chunk of my TV career being a promotions writer producer for UPN stations. And so there came a point where Star Trek was kind of like my job. And this was the point at which Voyager had started, Deep Space Nine was still running, they were still doing movies with the Next Gen crew. Mm-hmm. And I was a huge fan of it until I kind of started to burn out just a little bit. But
it was a burnout period. I never actually watched Voyager.
Really?
I only watched the first couple of episodes, and then I watched every episode that Barclay and Deanna Troi were in, getting them back. So I know how they got back, but most of the series I didn't watch. I mean, I may have watched one or two of the 7 of 9 stories just because she's pretty hot. She's pretty hot.
So what made you more angry, Mark? Was it the fact that there was a black Vulcan, or the fact that the captain was a woman?
That wasn't the problem. I just No. I will tell you, season 1, I would have went back and watched it, but season 1 they were developing a storyline that was going somewhere, and Chakotay has this kid with an alien, and then they say, oh no, it wasn't Chakotay's kid after all, and they changed the whole storyline, and they just redid the whole... And I was like, if they're refiguring the show like that, I didn't go for it.
The thing about Voyager, I've actually been rewatching it recently because I am, you mentioned the WARP books.
Yeah,
and I kind of...
WARP and now WARP. Get it right. There's a V in front of the Doctor Who with an O, and it's the speed for this Star Trek. Just
You're not selling a Big Finish.
I'm trying to help the listeners because Warp and Warp sound alike.
Sound a lot alike.
Yeah.
Originally, Warp 1 was going to be classic series and next gen and the other stuff that is covered, in Warp 1 as it is right now. And then I backed off of that because I was getting feedback from people I was hawking the books to at conventions saying, that's way too big. That's about the size of a Little Rock phone directory, and I'm not buying that, even though I had it priced really competitively. I mean, I've been in a vendor room with other big-time authors saying, you're not charging enough for that book being that size. And so I've started backing off the size of them a little bit. So each of the Warp books will cover just one series. Right. I'm not going to do the all-star link-up kind of like I did with Warp 2, which was over 500 pages. And in a similar vein, Warp 3 is going to be a slimmer book because it's going to cover all of Capaldi through next year. It's going to cover Class. And although I'm still kind of hemming and hawing over this, I'm really thinking the only Big Finish in Warp 3 maybe the new series stuff, the 10th Doctor, the War Doctor. And at some point I'll circle back, do VWORP 4, and it may be more big finish than TV. It'll really depend on what they're doing with the television series at the time, because Doctor Who has kind of gotten into this interesting pattern. It's almost like Red Dwarf in the 90s, where, we'll see you in 3 years.
They take a lot of hiatus. But, I mean, Sherlock, same thing. They got longer wait.
And the people who talk about
Sherlock's not a series, though. It's
I know it's a set of it's
TV
a collection of movies.
Yeah.
3 movies in a row.
People really. I never. I mean, I could be splitting hairs. I just never thought of it as a series. I just thought of it as I'm not quite sure what really, but.
And hiatuses are in Doctor Who's DNA anyway, because, let's talk about 18 months.
Let's not talk about 18 months. Let's talk about the wilderness years.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
because
we don't need to call the wilderness years, really, I guess, because they weren't. I mean, they were wilderness TV-wise, but they were chock full of books.
Yeah, and I loved the books.
That you can get at Amazon.com/Marku42. Buy all the latest and greatest on...
Somebody get the power strip. Mark's got a plug.
I got my plug in. I knew I'd get it in there somewhere. Yeah. Or come to a convention near you and shop at Marku 42 Books.
I have a feeling that would be a very expensive convention for me if you guys showed up at the same place as me. It'd be like, can we trade here?
Mark does deals all the time.
Yeah.
So that's... I've been on the subject of Voyager. I've been writing the later Warp books kind of in parallel, because it's really easy to watch, 3 next gens in a row and get completely burned out. Although that book is mostly finished. I'm just giving Warp 1 some breathing room before I drop the next gen book. The Voyager stuff and Enterprise and some of the later Deep Space Nine, I am rewatching for the first time since it initially aired. And generally, with all 3 shows, an episode is either much better than I remember it or gave it credit for being at the time, or much, much worse.
You said you went back and you've been watching Voyager again. Have you started watching Enterprise again?
Yes, I have.
What is your opinion on Enterprise?
I really think it was a missed opportunity. There was a lot they could have done with that show. The problem with Voyager and Enterprise both is that for the first time in over 25 years, you had network executives delivering notes instead of the show going directly into syndication. And so you had a whole layer of interference that had not existed for Deep Space Nine and Next Gen. And the UPN executives in particular, I just finished reading a book about the first 10 years, or really not the first 10 years. It was a book about sort of the initialization of the ideas of the WB and UPN all the way through the point at which they jumped into the back of a Ford in the CBS parking lot and had a baby named the CW. And
which stands for Comics World, because of all the DC Comics stuff.
Exactly, but I'm not complaining.
I think Berlanti has stock in CW now.
If he doesn't, he should. He really should. But UPN had some really clueless executives who, they're kind of... They're like some people trade stocks these days. They had no stomach to play a longer game. And so they would throw in contradictory notes. This is probably what happened with Chakotay's baby, is someone at the network freaked out.
Oh, it totally was. It totally was the network, but I didn't like where the network was forcing it to go.
Exactly. And it was worse for Enterprise because they had a whole new regime. And I don't know if you've seen the Enterprise Blu-rays, with the special features where they get the cast and they get the writers and Rick Berman together to talk about it. They had UPN executives saying, could there be a different boy band on every week, and could they do a number? And, we'll put them in alien makeup just for that week, and we'll do a soundtrack at the end. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because they wanted to do a licensing tie-in at the end.
Oh, my
God.
Oh.
Let me guess, these guys now work at the new sci-fi channel, SYFY channel.
I wouldn't be surprised. But there was network interference of the kind that made NBC in the 60s look light-handed. And so with Voyager and Enterprise, I'm finding, I'm rewatching it, and, the episodes are in many cases deeper than I gave them being credit for. But where they're bad, they're very, very bad. And, you just see the fingerprints of the network saying, we really need you to bend this show over to connect with WWE SmackDown. We want The Rock on this week.
Yeah.
And that'll be covered because, to a certain extent, I wasn't working for the network directly, but you would get paperwork from them. You would get promotional paperwork from them. And you could sense the sea changes. And so once we get into the later Warp books, there's going to be some inside baseball there. For example, the first year that Voyager was on, UPN used to send the stations on a satellite feed 2 completely different sets of promos for each episode. One of them would be for the male audience, the other for a female audience, which would almost always play up the relationship aspects.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my God.
And let me tell you, in my position as someone who had to put the local station logo and time on these network spots and schedule them for air, I never, ever used the female skewing promos.
Chakotay wears clothes that only David Bowie could want.
What?
In Star Trek Voyager this week on UPN.
Tonight, Felix takes it all off. But
I can see what you mean, and I have not revisited Voyager in a very, very long time, and I just sort of tapered off. I sort of let it go. I came back and watched the last 10 minutes of the last episode, but all the pieces were in place. I had a solid cast, and I think the characters all definitely had legs. And my biggest criticism of Voyager was that, okay, they are truly cut off. This is Star Trek's version of Lost in Space. Yeah. But I never got any feeling of desperation. I really wanted them to be put into situations where they had to make hard choices about sticking to Federation and Roddenberry-esque ideals.
Well, I thought there were episodes where they completely broke the Prime Directive. Again,
I'm not about breaking the Prime Directive. I'm talking about like a daily we have something we have something that is an alien technology that these guys can give us some technology that'll help us, but we know they're complete absolute bastards and they're going to use it to conquer the side of the universe. And let's talk about this. Let's debate this. Let's do whatever. And the other problem is, like, every time I thought the ship got hit with something, I thought it should leave a scar. And I thought that by the end of the season, the ship should be unrecognizable, like the 2 different warp nacelles.
The 100-Year War. I did see the 100-Year War and that 2-parter, and they did show Voyager getting pummeled and taking a lot of damage in that story, but then it reset. So
it always reset because it was being syndicated after the network run, and there was absolutely no guarantee that the episodes would run in order. Right, and that's why all of the Star Trek shows, up until you get to, maybe the last season of Deep Space Nine, is the first time you really see stuff that is picked up best by binge watching. Up until then, they kept everything completely disconnected.
Well, no, I thought Deep Space Nine did have an overall arc through the seasons that would. If you missed an episode or 2, you might mess up a little.
Well, there was background season plots, and then there was full blown arcs. They didn't do the full blown consecutive arcs where you missed an episode. Guess what? You need to kind of go back and do a little homework.
And that's why I watched Babylon 5 and not Deep Space Nine for the longest time. I have watched Deep Space Nine now. I like it, but I love Babylon 5.
And when Enterprise came around, I watched about the first 20 minutes and that first decontamination chamber scene. I turned it off. I turned it off, and I never looked back again.
Neelix takes it all off again. Tonight at 7.
No, it was like, I was like, I thought it was insulting. It's just like, okay, I get it. I'm a sci-fi nerd, so naturally I'm titillated at the sight of a hot Vulcan girl taking off her clothes, rub the decontamination lotion on my back. I was like, F you all.
But I like the fact that Trip and T'Pol got together, and in the books that came after, I mean, even in the last season, they had the kid, the sort of kid they had together, and then their relationship in the series of books of the rise of Federation and the Romulan War. I like the 2 of them together, even though they're never together. If you know what I mean, you have to read the books to understand what I mean by that.
It was an interesting development. They just really, you got the tip of the iceberg of that right at the end of the televised series. Then of course because
Trip didn't really die, folks. Just to let you know. He didn't really die.
Oh yeah, they unkilled him pretty quick, and I totally applaud that decision. I think
me too, because that was stupid.
That was the dumbest thing.
That was kind of like killing
ever
Iron Horse off, but in World of Worlds.
But it was even pointless. I mean, there was nothing to it. It was almost like, killing off a red shirt. There was, I didn't even see the point of it or where it was going or why it happened.
There's a quote, and it's either Winston Churchill or it's General Patton, who goes into this long thing about war and then says, you will die like a dog for no good reason. And that quote sprang immediately to mind when I saw that episode. That and the fact that it was a Valentine to Next Gen and really nothing to do with Enterprise.
Didn't it fit in the middle of a commercial break of a Next Generation episode? I remember a Series 7 episode of Next Generation.
It was the Pegasus.
Riker it was the Pegasus. Okay, I swear to God, I was telling people that. They're going, "What are you talking about, Mark?" No, I knew fit in there. Okay, it was the Pegasus. Yes. Okay.
Congratulations, Mark.
Oh, hey, so I got Star Trek cred now too. Cool. Doctor Who cred and Star Trek cred. There we go. Tell us about the other venture that you're going into, and I know Patty is definitely excited about this. The Telefantasy book that you're doing.
Yes, that one has been in progress for several years, and what you talked about the VWORP books, kind of referencing various British sci-fi shows, especially because the AKA section really kind of radiates outward, starting with genre work, that is also sci-fi, and then into other things. Part of the reason of that is that it's going to cross-reference with what is currently called, I may yet pick up a snappier title for it, because I really like the word telefantasy. It's just not a word that is used over here.
Yeah, telefantasy is a great word. I've always liked that word.
Yeah, and I seem to remember it was coined by a British fanzine called Time Screen.
Yeah, I used to get that. Yeah.
And I'm really a fan of that word. It's just I'm afraid that if I put it on the cover of a book, people are going to scratch, people in Barnes & Noble are going to scratch their heads and go, huh? So as it is now, it's titled...
Well, it's a book about Skinamax. That's basically what telefantasy is about.
What else would it be?
Somebody say Skinamax?
Oh, hey, it's Iggy Matthews. Hi, Iggy, how you doing?
Are we actually doing After Dark?
No, we're not. We're talking about British telefantasy.
Iggy, I've been here the whole time, and I have no freaking idea what the hell they're talking about. Tell us about telefantasy, and I'm like, get to it.
That's why I came in here. I'm like, oh my God, I can finally do my Mark Who 42 After Dark. But no, that's not what we're doing.
We are going to do it. I promise you, sometime in 2017, we will do Mark Who 42 After Dark.
After Dark.
I volunteer for that.
You're in. Okay.
It could not be any more of a detour, but
we love detours.
And look at that! I got a new setting for my sonic screwdriver. Anyway,
it has multiple speeds.
It's got 3 settings.
Oh
Katie
wait,
Manning.
I catch the reference.
This is
come on.
Katie Manning for Sonic Screwdriver.
Oh.
Baumgarten, you better not be talking smack about my girlfriend, or I will.
know your girlfriend. I forgot Katie was your girlfriend, Patty. I apologize. I'll change that to Sophie Aldred uses a
There you
sonic
go. There you go.
Not stopping there.
You know the theme song for that sexy little toy you're talking about, it should be "We go on and on and on and on and on."
The class
what are we talking
theme.
about?
It's classy. Okay, so
That's
let's go
so
back. Let's go into telefantasy. So you're writing the book about telefantasy.
Yeah, and it's as it is right now. The title is The Guide to 42 British Science Fiction and Fantasy Television Classics.
When that comes out, we should advertise for it because we're Mark Who 42, so it's a perfect tie-in here.
Corporate synergy such as UPN has never known.
There you go. Yeah, checks in the mail.
It's going to cover, I mentioned Moonbase 3 earlier, and of course I mentioned Blake 7. The book will have a guide to each show, but the critique will probably be at the end of the season or series, which in some cases is the same thing. But there are, obscurities such as Dark Season, which was Russell T. Davies' first show, which is so cheesy you can't not love it. because all the lead characters are practically wearing neon and everyone else is wearing gray. You could not possibly, put more of a pin in it. Watch these people ignore everyone else. There are plenty of other things. There are some shows I wish I could add to the running order, but some of them will also be TV movies. There will be one-offs like there was a BBC TV movie in 1972 called The Stone Tape, which I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have. It's a very nice ghost story, I must add.
Yeah, it's very atmospheric.
Are you going to cover Quatermass and
oh, yes.
Avengers, new and old classic?
I don't know. Avengers would really, to me, it's more of a spy show.
It is a spy show, but it, especially in the Tara King episodes, they classify it as telefantasy. Avengers is in the class of telefantasy.
It is, and I'm actually a fan of it. That's another Big Finish thing that I'm glad they've done because, that stuff seems to be gone forever. And, the thing about missing episodes in the UK.
They did just find that one episode.
Yeah, was it the first one?
No. It was one that they did in the third set of the Big Finish audios, so it must have been like the 8th episode or something. I'm not sure which episode it was. I can't remember.
I would really like to see the first one.
Well, they've got the first 20 minutes of it.
The audios make it out to be incredibly gritty, and you're sitting there listening to it thinking, my God, there's no way they'd do this on British TV in 1961. So I'm wondering if they have taken, perhaps some small liberties with the script to modernize slightly. But I'd like to see how shocking it really was for its time. But The Avengers is not in the book because, to me, it has more spy DNA.
Okay, how about The Prisoner? Patty's favorite show.
Oh, yes. The Prisoner is definitely in. And Hitchhiker's Guide is in. Red Dwarf, of course, is in. And it's taken me so long to write this book that, we may be through Red Dwarf 12 by the time it sees print.
Oh, Red Dwarf 11 was good.
I liked 11.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good.
I loved the episode with the guy who gets stuck in the 3D print, gets paper jammed in the 3D printer. That really struck me as up there with some of the best of their early material, where they would just do something crazy, throw the money at a little bit of makeup, and yet it makes you giggle for the whole show.
Yeah.
The other big omission from this book, if I'm going to, confess my sins early, is there is Jerry Anderson stuff in it, but I couldn't decide which supermarionation to go in there, so I'm really concentrating on Jerry Anderson's live action stuff.
I think that's a wise choice.
UFO Space 1999 Space Precinct.
Oh, yes, I remember Space Precinct. I watched that, too.
And there's a one-off TV movie that was actually done as a pilot to cross-sell to NBC in the States, which used a lot of Space 1999 sets.
I think I have a copy of it. That's the
they released this on DVD. Fanderson did several years ago, and
wait, what's it called?
I would actually have to look it up here. But the thing I remember distinctly about it is the absolutely bizarre casting, which is we're going to cast Brian Blessed as the wise, sedate captain of the ship.
Day After Tomorrow into Infinity.
What? The Day After Tomorrow.
The Day After Tomorrow.
Well, I think in the UK they had it as Into Infinity.
Right. I've got both titles.
For Tomorrow was the NBC title.
Yeah.
And I think NBC actually aired it once. I don't think it aired in the UK. But it's a really bizarre thing because they're trying to slip in educational things about space. And at the same time, I can't sit through the whole thing and watch it without thinking, okay, why are you casting Brian Blessed as the quiet, stoic leader of this ship? Because quiet and stoic are two flavors you just really don't know Brian Blessed for. I'm sorry. Dive! That's what I know him for.
Golden alive? Sorry. How about Randall and Hopkirk, deceased?
Randall and Hopkirk, that one I have not been able to track down or find. Most of this stuff is stuff that I had either done PAL tape trades for in the 80s and 90s, or it was stuff like Moonbase 3 or Star Cops that had since come out on DVD.
Well, do you have a multi-regional DVD player? Because it is available on Amazon CO UK, both versions of it.
Oh, I have to check that.
Yeah. The Tom Baker version with Vic and Bob. Oh, people say that it wasn't that good. It was. I liked it. I always like Bob Mortimer and Vic Reeves, and I thought that their version was very funny, and Tom Baker worked in it. But the original Randall and Hopkirk, those stories were just it's a telefantasyist dream to watch these things.
I will have to seek that out.
Yeah.
Boy, I may have to bump something from the roster because the lineup is sort of judged by, I don't want this book to be too heavy to carry.
Right. Well, that's what the Kindle's for.
My pitch at convention is you can buy VWORP 1 and VWORP 2 at the same time, and you not only have a great guide to Doctor Who, you basically have a two-handed melee weapon.
Why don't you give where they can get the books from? Give a little plug.
The books are available both in print and in Kindle form from Amazon.com, the various tendrils of the Amazon empire. Mm-hmm. Boy, that's not a phrase you use every day. But
no.
They're also available directly from thelogbook.com, which is my site, and I have the ebooks priced and try to price them competitively with the Kindle, but some of them are slightly higher, and here's the difference. The Kindle versions, especially VWORP, which you've seen the PDF of, so it breaks into multiple columns. Kindle conversion totally chokes on that. Several years ago, I was in the Doctor Who story bundle in 2013.
Yeah, I bought it. That's where I bought VWORP 1 from the Doctor Who story bundle. I bought it from that.
I love the story bundle, guys. That was actually the most money VWORP 1 has ever made for me, was being part of that bundle, which is why I keep tapping on their shoulders on Twitter and saying, what we really need is another Doctor Who story bundle.
Yeah.
But the Kindle conversion just...
Yeah, there is a problem with it. The version, because I bought the set of two recently from thelovebook.com. And, it was PDF, and I converted it myself to Kindle. And so there are parts of the book where there are, like, duplicate letters and stuff. It doesn't quite work in Kindle. But
yeah, the Kindle versions that I've done for both VWORP and WORP, basically what I did was deformat the book, put everything in a single column in 12-point Times Roman, which, as capable as the Kindle is, you would think it could handle a little bit more layout than that. I would hate to be an indie comics publisher trying to put something out in that venue.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to buy it again to get a perfectly working book. But I did read it. I mean, regardless of the multiple letters and difficulty with the way it formatted it, I still, because it was so good, I went through it. I read it. I enjoyed it, even with the flaws that the Kindle had on it.
Oh, that doesn't even count the flaws that I left in it.
Yeah, I know, because my flaws were because I made my own Moby file. The Moby file that you professionally made didn't work perfectly, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of have a... I like Kindle. I like ebooks. I see the rationale for them, the convenience, the price, and everything. And at the same time, I just kind of have a love-hate relationship with Kindle itself because it becomes sort of like, and I can say this because I'm from Arkansas, it's like being a Walmart vendor. You want your stuff on their store shelves. Bend over. And don't complain about it. And so it's kind of analogous to that.
Walmart. I think we lost a sponsor, folks. No, just kidding. We don't. No.
Or we gained one. I don't know.
Or we gained one. Yeah.
But that's that's sort of the advantage of buying the ebooks from the logbook.com is basically you're getting the files that I sent to print, and so you're seeing it with the icons, with the formatting. Including the Cyberman icon, which a friend of mine on the forums on my site pointed out to me, that looks like the love child of a Cyberman and Marvin the Paranoid Android from the 1981 Hitchhiker's TV series.
Can I say I agree with that fact?
The thing is, I'm so in love with that idea that I can't change or update it. That's, it stands as is.
Yeah. You keep talking about your site. What is your site?
My site, it's kind of just the repository of stuff that I'm interested in and write about a lot. Now, I will admit that it has suffered in terms of new material in recent years because I've been doing books instead.
Right.
And some of that, on a cynical consumerist level is because, I can charge admission for the books, whereas the site has a Patreon that is being supported by one guy. I'm not complaining about it because that's That's $1 a month that I didn't have before. But at the same time, that's not exactly keeping the lights on. Then again, I'm not one of these self-publishing authors who is expecting to quit his job in the next 2 months.
So the site is?
thelogbook.com, and in recent years it's kind of become a mashup of science and science fiction because I'm a big space program and astronomy nut. And so the main menu of the site, it's actually thelogbook.com/menu. It is a Today in History thing, which will tell you which episodes that are in the episode database aired on this day. But also, was there a shuttle launch this day? Was there a satellite launch this day that was, the first Hurricane Hunter satellite in the 1960s? And so it's gotten just a little bit educational just because I love that stuff. And that's also, there was also a Day in History podcast that takes that stuff and evolves it, hopefully in sort of a fun way, lasting about 5 to 10 minutes each. But people really seem to like that. And, it's kind of a potato chip thing. You can't listen to just one.
I haven't said this in a long time, but you're listening to Mark Who 42. We've got our guest, Earl Green, the author of VWORP, VWORP 2, VWORP, and more to come. Earl, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you very much for letting me go off the road topic-wise as much as we did.
Any final questions, guys?
What would you call all-around, maybe like the best representative of television science fiction based on all your research and, whether it's you're mixing your personal feelings or objective.
Okay, are we talking about UK or overall?
You can define it. Let's take it down to UK because that eliminates Star Trek, and Star Trek would probably be an obvious one.
Right. Although I'm really waiting to see what this new Star Trek series is going to be. I'm sort of looking back and forth, going, "Don't suck," which I've incidentally. I said that back when they did that Blade Runner teaser for the new one in December, don't suck. The best, and here's the thing, there's a difference between the best UK science fiction and my favorite UK science fiction.
And I'm very glad you make that distinction because lots and lots and lots of people cannot get that out of their heads.
Right. I dearly love Blake's 7, but at the same time, it is campy as hell, and you can't watch it today without a smirk.
That's true.
But as far as the best one, actually, kind of going back to Blake 7, it would be the Chris Boucher series. Chris Boucher was a script editor of Blake 7 and really wrote a lot of the sharpest dialogue for that show. It would be his criminally short-lived series, Star Cops.
Oh, I love Star Cops.
Which was on in late 87. I adored that show. I cannot believe it didn't go any further.
I like the theme song. I'm sorry to people that didn't like the theme song to that. I thought that was the song worked.
It's got one up on Enterprise because who doesn't love the Moody Blues?
Yeah.
Every time someone talks about the Enterprise theme.
Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
It was a Rod Stewart song that was redone.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah. This isn't the Rod Stewart we wanted. It's the Rod Stewart we deserve. But because he's kind of a Rod Stewart impersonator, which wasn't always normally that guy's vocal style. But anytime someone on the net starts going off about the Enterprise theme, I'm like, oh, but have you heard? And there's one guy years ago who posted the Star Cops theme on YouTube, and I'll always throw the link at them. So, okay, now what say you? So, of course, both of them pale in comparison to the theme from K9 and Company.
K9, do 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 do. All right.
But I really
knows the lyrics to the song. Really?
As far as Star Cops go, and the voice goes. As far as Star Cops goes, I think it does a better job than most sci-fi, perhaps even including some of my other favorites like Star Trek and Babylon 5. It does a better job of projecting into the future what technology will do to us, what effect it will have on us, and ethics and morals and things like that, and the laws that will have to be drawn up.
Interesting.
That show... that is one that it urgently needs to be remade. If we're so remake happy these days, why don't they dig up Star Cops? Of course, I always lose people when I say the same thing about the Star Lost, which was the old Harlan Ellison.
Star Lost was great.
It has a fantastic premise.
Yeah, okay.
That it just kind of whizzed down the drain
Yeah.
once you got to about week 2. because
You're right,
CBC,
you're right.
the Canadian broadcaster, they weren't going to commit to anything more than shooting on video against a green wall like you would do with a weather forecast. And it just kind of becomes painful. And of course, Harlan Ellison didn't stick around for that.
No,
He
He doesn't stick around for anything.
Exactly.
Well, he stuck around for Babylon 5. He was
Well, that's
always
because
JMS.
because he was never directly involved. I mean, JMS would run
He was
some
a
ideas
consultant.
past him. Yeah, I mean,
He wrote that one story, though, which I liked a lot.
The two guys in the rank and file.
That was a cool way to tell the story.
all I know is I would have watched Babylon 5 if they had gone through their promise to do a sequel to Demon with a Glass Hand.
Yeah, and now that actor has left us.
Robert Culp, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Culp, so we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I remember reading about that in Cinefantastic and thinking, how in the hell are they going to squeeze that into the same universe? And I always felt let down by the fact that I did not get an answer to that question.
Right.
No, unfortunately not.
But that is my pick for the best. It may not be my favorite. There are things that I like more and I go back to and rewatch more. But at the same time, as far as just sheer quality of the writing and the performances, I really cannot strongly enough recommend Star Cops. If anyone hasn't seen it, I really think they'll fall in love with it. There have been so many attempts to do cop show in the future, and so many of them missed the mark. That one is Space Precinct. Well, there was one that I wrote an article about earlier this year, 1977, starring Ernest Borgnine and John Amos of Good Times fame, called Future Cop, which ironically, that got sued into oblivion by the two writers that they apparently stole the premise from, Harlan Ellison and Ben Bova. So there's a reason you've never heard of it.
We might as well bring in Automan as well. Okay.
No. You want to get obscure? Let's talk about Superforce, which they filmed here in Orlando in the early 90s when Orlando was Hollywood East, or at least that's what they kept trying to tell everybody. Even on a RoboCop type show.
Wasn't Superboy filmed on Disney property? Yeah.
Yes, it was, because if you took the backstage lot tour, they would never shut up about it. And there would be chase scenes where in the street where Superboy would fly down the criminals trying to get away, because they always try to drive away from Superman before they try to shoot him. But the monorail tracks would be visible right there from the road.
Yeah,
and it was like, I didn't know Smallville had a monorail system. How quaint!
Yeah.
Big public works project. They don't talk about it a whole lot.
Yeah, it's Luthor Core.
Well, the ultimate question was always, why would anybody spit the sidewalk in Smallville, let alone commit a major crime?
Christian, do you have anything else you want to ask Earl?
No. I think we went beyond a geekdom I couldn't put my head around with. I just started thinking, when you guys were talking about bringing back Florida projects that were here, all I could think about was, let's bring back Thunder in Paradise. I don't know why. I don't know. I can't explain it. Well, first of all, I want to see how Chris Lemon's doing these days. But
Well, don't forget, Patrick McNee was on that show.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
he was. Yes,
oh my
he was.
God! Damn. All right.
Patrick McNee was in everything. I think it was actually a federal law for a while. You were doing a show. He had to appear in it because he was in the second episode of Automan.
Yes,
was
he
it
was.
The second or the first?
It was the second. I don't think he was in the pilot. I think there was a pilot, and then there was the first episode. So it might have been the first episode. But yeah, he was in it. Oh, and then he did that Bond movie, View to a Kill. Really needed Patrick McNee in that, didn't we? Oh, gee.
Who cared? All anybody cared about was that Grace Jones was in it. That's,
No, you know what? The best part about View to a Kill was the Duran Duran music video, and at the end where he goes, the name is Bond, Simon Le Bon. That was the best part of View to a Kill.
Which they started cutting it off before he said that after about the first month or so, and that was...
Yes, they did. They took that out of the broadcast version.
The best part about View to a Kill is listening to Patty mimic the guy in the wheelchair. I can't think of his name.
Blofeld?
Something about, Mr. Bond, I'll get you. I forgot the line. It was some.
Oh, when he gets dropped into the smokestack?
Yeah, that's For Your Eyes Only.
Oh my God!
It's For Your Eyes Only. So you got it mixed up.
Damn, think like a geek card. Yeah. Never mind.
Down! We can do a deal! I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel!
There you go. That's what I was waiting for. The most surreal line I've ever heard a villain say to protect himself.
Well, the most surreal treatment of saying, I'll buy you a delicatessen.
Well, before we go completely insane, I want to thank you once again. Earl Green, thank you for coming on Mark Who 42. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
So, it's really interesting with Earl Green, because since the interview, I finished reading the Warp book that we talked about, the Star Trek book, and I kind of liked it because at the very end of it, they actually have an episode guide of the Lieutenant. Do you remember that?
Oh, wow.
Because they're talking about
I've never seen it.
They're talking about Gene Roddenberry and all the stars that he used in both. So at the end of it, in the appendix, he put an episode guide of the Lieutenant.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The Lieutenant, of course, was the show that Gene Roddenberry did just prior to starting the Star Trek show, and it was about a lieutenant in the military.
Lieutenant in the Marine Corps.
In the Marines. Robert Vaughn was in it, the late Robert Vaughn, who you got to dress up as at a party, didn't you, Patty?
Just recently, yeah.
Yeah. So it all ties together. Hooverstum and everything all ties together with Star Trek and party. Good times. All right, guys. Christian, what are our upcoming events?
Oh, boy. I'm going to go through this really fast because we've got a lot of conventions that are confirmed. Some of them we don't know as to what we're doing with them as of yet. We know we're going to be hosting panels at these conventions. But for the first start off, this coming weekend, February 4th at 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. off of Story Road in Ocoee, Florida, there is the grand opening of the comic book store Highlander Novelties. And there's going to be a special guest. You're going to meet Tim Proctor, who's a sketch artist for The Walking Dead, and also meet Scott Fenster, who was featured in Face Off. And from what I understand, if I'm right, they're going to do a live demo on Tim Proctor with Scott turning him into a zombie. They're going to spend the whole day spending hours putting makeup on him. So throughout the entire day, when you're coming in and out, you're going to see Tim being transformed into this zombie. And of course, Mark Who 42 is going to be there. We'll be selling some Doctor Who merchandise out there.
I think we'll be selling some Big Finish audios and some novels, Doctor Who novels from the Wilderness years, and some of the Doctor Who Target novelizations from the 70s and 80s.
There you go. But it's going to be taking place this weekend, February 4th at 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. You definitely want to be out there. All this information, check us out at marku42.net on all the conventions that are coming up, except for a couple, which I'll explain. The next one coming up is Ken Spivey Presents Time Lord Fest, taking place just one day, Sunday, February 19th, at the Events Factory located in Tampa, Florida. This will be from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We will be performing panels. We will be doing Q&A, so definitely if you want to see it. And we will have the Mark Who 42 booth out there as well to sell merchandise. With that, in May, Timegate presents Wholanta.
Oh, yeah.
May 5th through the 7th in Atlanta, Georgia, and the feature actor will be Colin Baker, our favorite Sixth Doctor. Yeah, the Sixth Doctor will be out there, and there'll be quite a few special guests as well, but definitely you'll want to see us performing out there in Atlanta, Georgia, taking place May 5th through the 7th. For further information, again, you can go to marku42.net and click on the link, click on the icon that says Wholanta, and it will bring you up all the information, including location, times, and any special guests. Of course, Mark Who 42 will be out there performing panels as well. Also that month, Oasis 29 in Orlando, Florida, here from May 19th to the 21st. They're going to have a special featured guest author, Faith Hunter, out there, so definitely you want to get your tickets online. The link is, again, on marku42.net. And for our final announcements, these links are not on the website yet because we're still getting information. We're not on their pages as of yet, but it is confirmed. We will be returning at both MegaCon and MegaCon Tampa Bay. MegaCon will have two big guests going on out there. First of all, it will be the last appearance of Stan Lee in Florida. So you'll definitely want to get out there if you want to see Stan Lee one last time in Orlando, Florida, MegaCon, and a rare appearance by none other than the Rocky Horror Man himself, Tim Curry.
Ooh.
Dr. Frankenfurter. He will be out there. I did not get to see the new Rocky Horror Picture show that took place on Fox. But I am very excited to see this guy. I mean, he, like John Hurt, is one of my growing up idols. He's always been in all these movies that you've seen him be a part of, and one of my favorite.
Arthur in Spam-A-Lot. The guy's amazing.
Hey, I saw him in Clue. That was my.
Yeah, he was good in Clue too.
Anyway, MegaCon Orlando taking place at the Orange County Convention Center May 25th through the 28th. Now, the information is on their website at megaconorlando.com, and also MegaCon Tampa Bay. That will be taking place September 29th through October 1st. You want to check out their sites for any upcoming stuff. MegaCon Tampa Bay, since it's a little bit further out, they still have their old stuff up there, so they don't have any new guests as of yet. But keep an eye also at MegaCon Orlando. They already have 3 or 4 guests up on their site and more coming. And, of course, we should be being announced shortly on their 2 websites. So a lot going on for this year, and believe it or not, there's a lot more coming in final confirmation. So be on the lookout at marku42.net for all this information as it comes up.
I'd like to welcome our new sponsors to our website, Amazon, which joined us a while back. If you go to marku42.net and click through the Amazon link, a portion of your purchase will go to help produce this show. So do it that way. Please go to Amazon. Amazon Prime works the same way. If you get Amazon Prime, it will help pay for this show. If you want a Mark Who 42 t-shirt in either black, white, or gray, and you want a male or a female shirt, go to our link on marku42.net as well and click on either the male or the female side of the picture, and you'll go to the right page. And there's also audibletrial.com/marku42, which you can also get to through our website. And Audible, you will get a free month and a free Audible audiobook download. So try those out.
And what's so cool about our link to Amazon.com, there is nothing additional. So whatever
on
you
any
make
of these,
purchase,
there's nothing additional.
Yeah, it's true. But with Amazon, if you make a purchase on Amazon, there are no additional fees. So whatever you purchase, a portion of that will come to us automatically. And definitely, if you're looking for that somebody special coming up this Valentine's, definitely want to go. Yeah, if you're looking for a last-minute gift, now's a good time to go on there now. Again, as Mark mentioned, go to marku42.net, find the icon for Amazon, click on that, and just make your purchases. And it's that easy. And again, it costs nothing extra, and you are supporting Marku 42 to continue our radio show.
Yeah. So don't forget to go to our Facebook page, Marku 42, our Twitter page, at Marku 42. Go to our Tumblr page, Marku 42, our website, like we said, marku42.net. And remember, if you want to continue listening to our show, we are on Krypton Radio. We are on iTunes under a new listing. We're on Google Play Music under the different listing, Doctor Who, the Mark Who 42 podcast. We are on TuneIn. We are on Stitcher. You can make the switch there. All the places, please make your switches so you can continue listening to our show. And all our old shows will be on the new listing. So you can still listen to all the great old shows that we've done. I want to give a special announcement that on the day after Valentine's Day will be our Valentine's Day show. And that's going to be a very special show, isn't it, Christian?
Yeah, we have a very, very special guest coming up for our Valentine's Day special. It is Miss India Fisher. If you are not familiar with her, if you listen to our show, you know about Big Finish. She plays Charlie Pollard, the companion of both the 8th, and then goes back and plays the companion to the 6th Doctor, the only companion to actually do that, to start with a future Doctor and then end up in the past Doctor. Definitely want to check out that episode. She is just sweet and adorable, completely.
Well, River Song does similar thing.
She did that, yeah kinda. But we got to see her progression.
Yes.
We saw her start in 10 and go to 12. This one, she starts in 8, and then we get to see her later go into 6. So
That is
cool.
true. But we've got plenty more for you before that show. Let me just say one more thing. Please go to iTunes and Google Play, wherever you can rate our show. Give us that 5-star rating if you can, because we love 5-star ratings. And write a review, and maybe we will read that review on the show like we read Boy Monkey Butt. And there was silence after I said Boy Monkey Butt, wasn't there?
Yeah, we did all the laughing earlier.
Yeah, we did all the laughing earlier. So,
I mean, we've already agreed that he is an asset to the show. So.
God, we're going to Gallifrey.
It's...
You're gonna laugh. You said
Until
Gallifrey
next time,
hell,
folks. From all of us here at Marku42, myself, Mark Baumgarten, Christian Basil, Iggy Matthews, Zion Kiros, and Patty Hawkins. Allons-y! Marku42 was written and presented by Mark Baumgarten, Christian Basil, Iggy Matthews, Zion Kiros, and Patty Hawkins. This episode was edited, directed, and produced by Mark Baumgarten. Visit Marku42.net, where you can register and become part of the Hooniverse Army. We can be contacted by email at mark@marku42, subject line, ? If you'd like a chance to be a guest on our radio show, send an email to our Media Relations Director, Christian Basil, at marku42media@yahoo.com. You can have Marku42 entertain at your next event or convention. Go to heroesonhand.com/Marku42. Space Coast Comics is a free monthly magazine found in over 120 locations currently throughout Brevard County, parts of Osceola, Volusia, and Indian River County in Florida, and soon to be available in Chicago. Follow them on Facebook to learn more. Doctor Who and its properties are owned by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. This show is owned and copyrighted by Mark Baumgarten, 2017. This is Krypton Radio.